Texas plans to execute Matthew Johnson, sentenced to death following his conviction in a 2012 robbery murder at a store near Dallas. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, a U.S. district judge, and the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals have allowed the sentence to stand. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected his request for review in February 2024, not disclosing a reason. During the trial, Johnson asked jurors for forgiveness, saying he was high and drunk at the time of the murder. For tonight's Execution Watch, host Marlo Blue, program director at KPFT, producer, video photo editor, and former anchor of KPFT Local News, legal analyst, criminal defense attorneys Meryl Pointier and Monique Sparks. Reporter Linda Snyder, anti-death penalty activist, reporting from outside the death house in Huntsville. Featured interview Jessica Weinstock Paredes, the executive director, and Denise Fodorero, research scholar on the National Registry of Exonerations. Now, Execution Watch.
Good evening. Tonight, the state of Texas will execute Matthew Johnson. Now age 49, Johnson was sentenced to death following his conviction in a 2012 robbery murder at a store near Dallas. Joining us first tonight is our reporter stationed outside of the death house in Huntsville, Texas, Linda Snyder. Linda, they call this particular unit the Walls Unit in Huntsville. We also know it as the Death House. Linda, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
So tell us, can you describe the scene tonight?
Well, it's calmer tonight, but they blocked off 2 spaces for us to be in. We can't go in the street like we used to. We can't set the tent up to keep the heat off of us. So it's extremely hot out here tonight, but it's okay. We're not going to leave. They're not going to run us off. That's for sure.
Are there very many people out there with you tonight?
Not very many. We've got about 13 people.
Excellent. Well, and can you tell me like what the scene is? Is Gloria using her bullhorn? Is there loud protestation? What's going on?
Oh yeah, Gloria's using her microphone, and she is cussing and everything else. And we've been trying to keep it calm because the OIGs have been really nice. Oh, they're going across they're crossing over right now.
If you don't mind, please tell our listeners what that means.
Okay, the execution is going to take place, and so that the meeting just crossed, and they're going into the building. And shortly after that, you'll see his spiritual advisor and the other witness that he has, Nitsky Paredes.
We know who that is then?
Yes.
And what is their relationship with Mr. Johnson?
She's one of the spiritual advisors, but she sees him as a friend. She is also on his friends list.
Is this someone that you corresponded with or knew?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mr. Johnson?
Okay, she said, Nitsky said, today, Monday, May 19th, I had my last visit with Matthew. I want everyone to know hearing this that Matthew is at peace. He is not the man who media portrays him to be, believe me. If he could take back that crime he committed, he most definitely would. He is so remorseful for all the pain he has caused, not only his family, but also to the victim's family. He is not a monster that media wants you to think he is. He is a man of God and one that wants everyone to know God's unconditional love. I asked him his favorite verse, and he told me Philippians 1:21. For to me, living means living in Christ, and dying is even better. And she said, at this time and phrase, it isn't about me. The Lord gives me the courage and the strength. One day, my brothers may have to take this same walk. I'm talking right now, and all I want is for my brothers to trust God. He is still with us. And that's basically what he had to say. And then another real close friend of his named Talon Carter, he wrote a little thing about him also. He said he spoke his last words to his brother, encouraging him to keep the fight and not give. I would talk for a few minutes before I was taken back to the cell on Death's Island. This is a situation I had been in before, matter of fact, twice. I hated it when people kept telling me to keep my head. I wouldn't tell MJ this. I just told him, stay strong, my brother. Since I have known MJ, he has never changed. He would always talk to me and speak with me on a spiritual level. I would tell him the first time we spoke that I wasn't a Christian, though I didn't mind hearing him say what he was preaching. Everyone preaches in a different way. Some use preaching and Christianity as a disciple tool to make people bend to them or to get people to fall into certain things, but that was not MJ. He was preaching, but he wasn't. If you didn't want to hear him out, then he would let God handle your believing. He felt he was doing his job when he tried to enlighten someone. And he said, you're falling right into the trap. And if you lose your cool while you're on death watch, you're falling into a trap that they want you to fall into. He was so used to being so quiet that people forgot that he was around. So hearing me was shocking. What he didn't know was he was told by an officer that he laughed. Carter, what white man crept into your watermelon patch? A lot of people didn't know what was being said, so they overlooked stuff like that. He said, God, I'm walking with you. You can see me. And then he told him that he would read while in the day room, but there was just too much chaos out there and started to stay in his cell. He went into his cell and he said, I told him, bro, I love you, stay strong, even through the worst time of your life. And that's what he had to say. So he was loved by people. I never got to meet him, but I never heard anything bad about him from anybody.
When you meet these people who are part of his spiritual world, how do you approach them? What do you have to say to them? You are, of course, for those who may be unfamiliar, Linda Snyder is what we call one of the death row angels, and she corresponds. They visit. They do all sorts of things for the people on death row, both our women and our male inmates. How did you get involved with this, and why do you keep doing it, Linda?
I got involved with it because I had a brother-in-law on death row, and he was moved to life. So he's at life now at the Cofield unit. But he told me, keep up with the guys, Linda. They love you. They want you to keep visiting them. So that was in 2005. So I continued after he got moved to continue to visit the guys. And that's my world now. I mean, this is what I should have done my whole life instead of working in the oil industry. Because I really love being with people. I love it. And I love seeing them smile.
Well, of course, Mr. Johnson is being scheduled for execution tonight for killing a woman he set on fire during a robbery in 2012. And this is going to be the fourth execution here in Texas today, or this year for 2025. Do you, in a stroke of very strange luck, at this moment, no one else is on the schedule. This is kind of an unusual situation for Texas. Have you heard rumors that they're about to release more, or?
We hear rumors that that's probably going to be a bad year next year. Won't be this year because it has to be 90 days out once they get given the date.
Right.
And that's getting pretty close to the end of the year. And we feel like next year is going to be bad. And also the witnesses just now crossed, so it's going to be going forward.
So for those who are listening to us, that does mean that the execution is about to begin. Linda, we'll be checking back in with you in just a little while, I suppose. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Is there anyone else there that you think could add to this conversation?
Not really. No one here really knows him, but everybody wants the death penalty to end. That's what we pray for.
Right. Thank you, Linda. We'll be talking with you a little bit later on. It was reported that in testimony during his sentencing that Mr. Johnson said he'd been under the influence of drugs and alcohol during the robbery and used lighter fluid to scare Harris, but had not intended to kill her. During the sentencing, prosecutors pointed to Johnson's previous criminal history and bad acts, while Johnson's family and employers testified to his positive role as a father and a struggle with drug abuse. Normally at this point in time, we would be bringing in our panel of lawyers to explain the case, to tell you about the different situation, the appeals, and not only the trial itself, but the appellate process afterwards. But due to technical difficulties tonight, we just don't have them here with us tonight. If you are checking in to 90.1 FM and looking for Thanks with Rand Mincer and Avery, they will be back next week in their regularly scheduled time, 6 p.m. As you know, this show was actually created originally by Ray Hill. Ray Hill, Elizabeth Stein, a group of very dedicated lawyers and individuals to bring about the fact that Texas was on a killing spree for those who were on death row. As soon as the state of Texas opened up themselves again to allow executions to happen, we had really what could not be called anything else other than an epidemic of executions that happened under George Bush, Rick Perry, onward from all that. It's calmed down a little bit, but it's about to start back up again. We can feel it. I'm sorry to say all of that. Let's bring in our guest. We have some wonderful guests tonight, which is very exciting for us. And joining us tonight is, well, let's start with David Fleming. Let's bring in David Fleming, an author and sports journalist for Meadowlark Media, and Pablo Torre finds out on his unusual dive into why the last words of some death row prisoners include shout-outs to their favorite sports teams. David, thank you for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Marlo, thanks.
I have to love any sort of organizations who basically say that sports explains the world. But how did you get that into the concept of death row inmates? How did you get this idea?
So I had heard many years ago that there was a database of the last words of the prisoners executed in Texas, and going through the series of last words that you can read online, we discovered that, in my mind, a large portion of those last words included shout-outs to their favorite sports teams. And I sort of immediately wanted to know more. I was fascinated by this. I like sports, but I don't like it that much. And I thought, this is crazy that these prisoners would take their last words to shout out sports. And so we then went about trying to find out more. And that is what eventually led me to Charles Flores at the Polunsky unit. And we went all the way to Polunsky to sit down with him to learn more about this phenomena. And what really started out as, well, we just didn't know where this would take us, but immediately we realized that there was something really, really important and insightful going on, that the connection to sports isn't silly for people on death row. It is a lifeline that keeps them connected to the world and continues to make them feel human, even though they're isolated so severely. So sports really does sort of help them survive on death row.
How has this experience changed you and your view of perhaps the death penalty?
Oh, so I've been doing this for 30 years. And we spent an hour with Charles, and I'll never forget being so nervous. It's quite a thing to get into the prison to be able to interview someone. And they give you an hour and they're very strict about it. And when we sat down, I was really not overcome by nerves, but very, very nervous until I realized that Charles just wanted to talk football. And I just immediately, he's done this repeatedly through this process. He was really the one, he really guided the interview. He's the one who got me to relax. He's the one who sort of kept me from losing it. And we just had this incredible conversation where at times it just didn't feel like we were even in prison. We were just two football fans talking. And they give you a 10-minute warning and you have to say goodbye, and then they cut off the mics. And as we're packing up, Charles is still there waiting to be taken back to his cell. And that is something really that stands out for me in the last 30 years, the sadness and the empathy and the understanding and the look on his face of knowing that, number one, he doesn't belong there, and number two, he was sort of watching us pack up and being able to leave. And it was all very, very emotional and impossible not to just feel deep empathy for what they're put through.
Were you actually prepared for that kind of experience when you started the process of going ahead and registering at Pulaski and going through the shakedown and setting up? Were you ready for all that?
I wasn't. And I admitted this on the show, is that I kept thinking, this will never happen. Maybe the warden won't let us do the interview. Maybe Charles will back out. Maybe his attorneys won't let us. And as we just kept getting closer and closer to it actually happening, I hadn't given it I just wanted to try and go into it with an open mind. But the process of getting into the prison and the things that you have to go through and the things that you hear and see and feel, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced on this job.
Okay, Charles, close your ears. If you're listening on KPFT 90.1 FM right now, don't listen, because I want to talk about you. I want to know what Charles's insight into football was like. You're an expert. What do you have to say? Charles, don't listen.
It was great because, I come from a family of Cleveland Browns fans. And so Charles actually, he's a diehard Cowboys fan. And he immediately was making fun of me and my family for for having to cheer for such a terrible team. And there was so much that I loved about this conversation. And it was mostly, that Charles, he is an educated, enthusiastic Cowboys fan through and through. He knows all about the different roster moves. He's convinced every year is the Cowboys' year. And, for a moment, it was like talking to any other sports fan.
And do you think that he had a real grip on the game, or was he just a fan?
No, he, I felt unprepared because it was right before training camp, and Charles had done all the research about the new players coming in, the outlook of the team. He really, really knew his stuff. And in our correspondence over the last year, which continues to this day, he's still giving me updates on the Cowboys. And I do love that when he meets with his attorney, who is not a huge sports fan, he basically sort of explains the outcome of every Cowboys game to his attorneys and to the people that visit him. So, we could use him. We could use him on our show for sure.
Let me ask you too. You talked about some of the rituals that he did. Could you go into those? The game day rituals for a person who's in solitary for 23 hours a day?
Right. And that's the most important thing about the sports is that it was, and these are Charles's words, that when he's able to watch the game, he's taken out of this place, and for 3 or 4 hours once a week, he gets to escape mentally, and you get the feeling that that is life and death for them. Just the ability to maybe to sort of release the tension that they live under. The way Charles explained it, and it just sort of stopped me in my tracks, was that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, someone is trying to kill me. That's the pressure. That's the white noise pressure that I live under. And if I can spend an hour working on my fantasy football or a couple of hours watching the game, he's like, that makes all the difference. And they go through, they're passionate fans, and the things that they have to go through to be able to watch the game. Charles, for example, has to sort of create this seat right by the window in the door of his cell. And I think he uses his legal paperwork to sort of create this bench for himself so that he can sit, and through the tiny, the window in the door with the steel mesh that goes across, he can lean in and get a clear view of the TV to watch the game. So that's one of the rituals. He went through a ritual of how he has to plan weeks in advance for the meal that he's going to make for like the playoffs or the Super Bowl. And what Pablo, the host of our show, and I just really got a kick out of was, he sounds like any other fan that's sort of proud of his tailgate. He was proud of his enchiladas that he makes for game day, and proud of his fantasy football, and suffers greatly with the poor roster moves that Jerry Jones makes. So he's sort of all in, and it gives you such great perspective as someone who likes sports and enjoys it. But what these guys have to go through just to watch the game, it makes you understand sort of how important it is to them.
So how do his fantasy football teams do?
Well, okay, so this was another moment that really sort of, again, just sort of took my breath away during the interview. And we were talking about how they conduct fantasy football and how they get the rosters to each other. And Charles really this really brought us back to reality. Was what Charles said, that most of the men that he played fantasy football with, that league is gone because they were all executed. And it was really, it kept us from getting too silly and too sort of far away from the reality that he deals with. And it was so matter of fact that he was just like, I love playing fantasy football, but all those guys are gone. And that's a reality of that I live with. So I hope that they can keep the fantasy football going, or maybe get some new players. But that's a really good question, Marlo. I never asked him how he did. So maybe he's not that great at fantasy football, and that's why he didn't tell me. Because surely if he had won, he would have told me that he was the winner of the
I think
league.
you might have heard about it. Yeah. I think you might have heard about it. Of course, this really is a very solemn occasion, and I don't want to make light of the situation. We are here in execution watch. We are waiting to hear that the execution of Matthew Johnson has been finished, and that the witnesses have come back across, and he's moving on to the next phase, which of course involves a completely different aspect of the life that he's been living in solitary confinement in the Polunsky unit. I'm going to bring Mr. Fleming back in just a moment, but I'd also just like to remind everyone who's listening to this broadcast that you are listening to KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, that if you had tuned in for Thanks with Rand Mincer and Avery, they will be back next week with another wonderful episode. We do have another guest who's here today, and I'd like to bring her in right now. Joining us tonight is Jessica Weinstock Paredes. She's the executive director and Denise Fodoraro Research Scholar for the National Registry of Exonerations. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what your organization focuses on.
Yeah, so the National Registry of Exonerations is essentially a website. We are an online archive of all known criminal exonerations in the United States. It is an academic research project that was founded at Michigan Law, University of Michigan. We also have a nonprofit arm, so we're a 501c3, and we study and track every exoneration that we can find out about. Each exoneree in our database has a narrative summary that details their journey through arrest, prosecution, conviction, and then exoneration. And we also code all of these cases according to an internal coding scheme, a social science that captures hundreds of data points and variables that taken together really tell the story of wrongful convictions in the United States and can begin to inform us of the anatomy of wrongful convictions. Where are they happening? How are they happening? Who are they happening to? What are the contributing factors to wrongful convictions? We provide this data to advocates, attorneys in the trenches who are doing post-conviction litigation, policymakers, other researchers, members of the media, journalists, students. We're constantly trying to increase the notoriety of the registry because after 13 years of being online, we are the authoritative record of all known exonerations in the US.
May I ask what your particular background is?
I'm a former criminal defense attorney. I practiced criminal defense in Miami-Dade, Florida, and Tampa, Florida, both times as a public defender. So I represented criminally accused clients who were indigent and couldn't afford private representation, so they were appointed a public defender. And I did that for many years and loved it, and then transitioned into academia, studying exonerations for the registry as the research scholar for nearly 5 years, and then became our executive director just this past October.
Are you all a privately funded company or organization,
No,
501c3?
we rely extensively on donations from private donors and foundations. We receive in-kind support from our partner universities. All of our work, all of our substantive academic work, our coding, our narrative summaries, goes through 3 levels of review. The top level being our editor review, which our editors are full-time faculty at our partner universities. So we do receive support from these universities by virtue of having this in-kind support via our editor staff. But our funding is all private donations, and we encourage and rely on those.
Let's talk a little bit more about specifically what you all do. Can you give us some idea of the latest statistics on death row exonerations, and especially here in Texas?
So we just launched a new website. We transitioned to our new platform in April of this year. And at that time, we combined our previously separate databases of pre-1989 exonerations and exonerations since 1989. All told, we now list over 4,000 individual exonerations. Most of our literature and most of our reporting and total counts focuses on the exonerations since 1989. 1989 is the year of the first DNA exoneration and really like the birth of the modern exoneration era. So we keep both counts now on our website, and you can manipulate our online table to include all of it, but most of the numbers that we report are exonerations since 1989. As of today, we have 3,680 in our database. 498 of those are from Texas. We have 143 exonerations with a death sentence, exonerees who were originally sentenced to death. And we have 12 from Texas. All of those are exonerations since 1989. We don't have any Texas death exonerations pre-1989.
Right.
462 cases total are in the pre-1989 database. But again, only 14 of those are from Texas, and none of those 14 are death row exonerations.
So, in your opinion, what are the main contributing factors to wrongful convictions?
Been very careful about taking my advocacy hat off in my role at the registry. So we really just try to be data driven and only report on what the data and the numbers show. We track 5 main contributing factors to wrongful conviction: perjury and false accusation, official misconduct, false or misleading forensic evidence, inadequate legal defense, and mistaken witness identification. Perjury or false accusation is the leading contributing factor to wrongful convictions. Out of the 3,680 exonerations in the database, 2,368 of them are marred by perjury or false accusation, so 64% of the database. The second largest contributing factor is official misconduct, which is present in about 60% of the exonerations, and then false or misleading forensic evidence present in 29%, inadequate legal defense present in 28%, and mistaken witness identification present in 27%. And I did run those same numbers for Texas-only exonerations, and the percentages largely tracked. Perjury and false accusation was the highest, and on down, official misconduct, false or misleading forensic evidence, inadequate legal defense, and then mistaken witness identification. False or misleading forensic evidence cases are overrepresented in Texas because we have 106 exonerations that were tied to a single incident in Harris County involving a forensic lab where we had tons of cases overturned. So that skews that data point slightly, but generally Texas tracks the rest of the database in the hierarchy of contributing factors.
We certainly knew about the police lab that had so much corruption and problems here in Houston. We followed that pretty closely for a while there. Who uses your database?
Innocence attorneys, conviction integrity unit heads, appellate attorneys, post-conviction litigation attorneys, any attorneys who are representing exonerees seeking compensation, other researchers, other advocates of criminal legal reform, policymakers, journalists, the mainstream media, and other educators who use our materials in curriculum.
At this point in time, I'm trying to find out if we have our lawyers who are actually in our Zoom room. If we do, let's bring them in.
They're not here. I don't see them.
Okay. Well, then let's bring in David Fleming at this point in time, if we may. David, you have an interesting mind. What would you want to know about exonerations? What is the most important aspect that would be your question for Jessica?
Well, you know what jumped out immediately for me, or my limited experience with Charles, was that I wrote down. I mean, Charles's case hits 4 of those statistical factors that Jessica mentioned. He was convicted. He was not the gunman. Was never accused of being the gunman. He was an alleged accomplice. Who was convicted largely on the junks of what is now considered the junk science of a witness who had been hypnotized to aid her memory. And I think all the other factors sort of count as well, as far as like the representation and the other things that Jessica mentioned. And yeah, I think you mentioned earlier sort of what the experience has been like for me, and it's uh, I'm getting up to speed on sort of just how insane this whole thing is, and that Charles and that other people can be in this situation to this day with this kind of with only this kind of evidence having put them on death row. One of the first things when we realized we wanted to talk to Charles, we realized that the person who had actually pulled the trigger and um, and pled guilty was released from prison in 2016. And Charles has been on death row for 25 years. And I think I think if I could bring anything today, which I know I'm a lightweight on this topic, but uh, a fresh set of eyes to just how insane some of these things are. Our jaws just dropped. We just couldn't believe um, that this was even possible.
I know that even here in Houston, Texas, it's not uncommon for me to talk to young people, to talk to people downtown, people who are I thought, involved in the legal system, you never know, who honestly do not believe that we still carry out capital punishment in the state of Texas. It's a little bit of a strange situation, but it sounds, is Charles involved in the law of parties? Was that part of his situation?
Right. You mean, yes, that where if there's a if someone is killed in the committing a felony, everyone involved gets charged the same way. Yes, I think that's correct.
Jessica, do people use your database in order to try to help reform laws in different states? Is that something that's one of the uses, or?
Yes, absolutely. We're cited in, legislative activity all the time. We're largely credited with the law change in Illinois several years ago that now prevents interrogators and other law enforcement personnel from lying to juveniles during interrogations, because we know that, and I forgot to mention false confessions. That's the sixth contributing factor to wrongful convictions. It contributes to the lowest ratio of wrongful convictions in our database. But this is a great example. We know that folks falsely confess. And there's a much higher likelihood of that for a juvenile client who has not yet matured and their brain has not finished developing, and they're much more vulnerable and impressionable to outside influence and pressure and coercion. And so through our data, we were able to demonstrate how many false confessions came from suspects who were being detained while they were, under the age of 18. And data like that is used towards, moving reform forward in that way. And we have, I can't remember the exact number, but I mentioned earlier, 143 known documented exonerations where someone was sentenced to death. So I would hope that that information would be really powerful and useful to capital punishment abolitionist activists and legislators who are considering the merit of capital punishment in their state. We keep lists of citations for how often we are used, not only in the media and in academic journals and references, but in policy reform efforts. And the list by the end of the year is hundreds of mentions long. So we are proud and excited and happy that folks are relying on the data. We ourselves capture it, protect it, and share it. We don't take stances or share our personal or organization-wide opinions on the advocacy issues or the policy measures. We want to remain an objective form of information and an objective source of numbers and statistics that other advocates and policymakers can rely on. And that allows us to maintain our credibility. We're not necessarily taking a stance one way or the other on the various issues. We're trying to provide very transparent, very reliable, accurate, and consistent data that supports the position of those other advocates. And I always tell folks who are new to our work and new to our registry that the data is powerful, the numbers are powerful, but the storytelling that we do is, I think, the most powerful thing that we do, because each exoneree is humanized to the reader, and you're able to really follow and track their journey from beginning to end. And the stories are shocking. As you're reading it, which of course it's being told from the perspective of exoneration, so we get to come into the fray once there's happy news. And you're reading these stories in hindsight, and this goes to what Dave was saying. You're wondering how they were ever convicted to begin with, right? So often the case was so flimsy against this person, and you're reading through the story. And I mean, I do this for a living. I read these all week, and I used to practice, so nothing should really be shocking me this much at this point. And I'm shocked constantly at how a case so thin even got to a jury, and then the jury convicted that person. And when you look at it from that perspective, the right, hindsight is 2020. You're looking at it looking back. It's really tragic and shocking that someone's 20 years or 30 years or 40 years were taken from them over something that they either had nothing to do with or something that didn't happen at all. We have a case characteristic filter on our table for no crime, and that'll show you the proportion of exonerations that exist where there was no crime at all. Someone made something up, an allegation was completely false on its face. And so through the lens of wrongful convictions, we really learn a lot about prosecution in American jurisprudence. We learn a lot about policing, and a lot of folks who are not open to the idea of criminal legal reform and are not open to the legitimacy of wrongful conviction, really love to claim that each one of these horrific instances is a one-off or an example of a bad apple, right? One official actor gone rogue. But what the registry really demonstrates is what legal reform advocates have said for decades, which is these problems are systemic, they're pervasive, they are in every state in this country, most counties in this country, and we have to start looking at it systemically and evaluating it systemically if we're ever going to advance real change.
Again, we are talking with Jessica Weinstock-Paredes. She's the executive director of the National Registry of Exonerations. Jessica, could you tell me, if you had to point to one thing that you're the proudest of that you all are accomplished, what would that be?
Well, this might be a bad answer, but sustaining. I'm proud that we've been able to sustain. This started as the brilliant idea of a law professor who recognized that this was not being recorded by the US government, this was not being recorded anywhere else. And so each one of these stories, they might make headline news one day and then they're forgotten. And we wanted an archive, a trove that bears witness to these horrific tragedies and mistakes and errors of the only system we have that can cage human beings. And we have sustained. We're 13 years going strong. We have a small team. The registry does a lot with a little. We produce really compelling literature on the issues that we track. We've stayed online. We've expanded our coding scheme year after year. We track and study more and more factors as time goes on. And I'm proud of our recent reports, and I'm proud of the last 11 and a half months of us transitioning to this new website and offering a more modern website to our users so that they can better access and navigate all the information and data that we want to share. But the thing that I'm most proud of is that we haven't gone away, and we aren't going to go away.
It's a remarkable undertaking. Is there anything else like that, what you all are doing in any of the countries where there is still capital punishment?
I do believe that as far as our exact model, we were sort of the first, and we've been humbled and flattered to be consulted by other registries around the world. We actually list them on our website now. There's a Canadian registry, one in China, the United Kingdom, and we have consulted with the architects of those registries, and they have, largely modeled what they do after what we do. We have very granular and specific criteria for inclusion in the registry, and it is designed in a way to hopefully generate a database of mostly factually innocent people. There's a margin of error with any database, and we can't say exactly what happens in each case, and we don't judge guilt or innocence. If someone meets the stated criteria for inclusion in the registry, they are included. We admire the work of DPIC, Death Penalty Information Center, folks like Exoneration Watch, like what you all are doing. There are other advocates nationwide who are trying to track and count things that are happening in the wrongful conviction community. But as far as we know, we are the only authoritative, comprehensive, known public record of all exonerations in the US.
It's fascinating. It really is. Have either one of you actually been at an execution vigil? You or David?
I have not.
David?
No, nope.
It's kind of an interesting experience, isn't it? Thank you both. Let's bring in, if we can, Linda Snyder. Linda's sitting out in the heat outside in Huntsville. They used to be able to carry a tent so that they could actually get a little bit of shade while they established their right to protest, but not today, not in this heat with the heat index of into the triple digits, and we're very grateful, Linda, that you are still there. Linda, can you hear us? Linda.
Okay, I hear you.
The application.
Can you tell us what's going on right now?
We had a big ruckus out here a while ago because there's a lady that came up screaming that, there's some of us who are for the death penalty. So y'all are no special people. And so we got mad and told them to go and all the guards came running and told the lady to go back away from us. She's been recording us the whole night. We thought she was one of us. So so they wouldn't make her go to the other side though, but Danny's gonna fire a memo off in the morning to the upper people about the situation because she doesn't need to be on this side. We can't be on the other side where it's supposed to be for the victims' families, but they won't move her. She's over here still.
Is there anyone else over on the other side? Is she just lonely?
I don't know if there's anybody over there or not. We can't see the other side because we're on it's like a hill that goes up and then down. So we can't see who's in that other parking lot. We have no idea. They won't let us over there. If we were to try to walk over there, they would stop us because we've tried to walk over there before.
Right.
When the police officers were there and they made us come back.
Of course, Danny is also one of the Death Row Angels, and she is involved with the prison show. We have the prison show is on KPFT 90.1 FM every Friday evening from 9 until 11 at night, and it's a really wonderful outreach type of program. And in fact, if I may just give a small reminder to everyone. That if you're in the Houston area, the Houston Cinema Arts Society is presenting the Houston premiere of the movie, The Prison Show, of which I'm sure that Linda and Danny and David Collingsworth will certainly be involved in. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. at the Deluxe Theater on Tuesday, June the 3rd. And this is a very interesting documentary that has been years in the making. It includes some of your favorite people, of course, Ray Hill and some of the earlier people who began the prison show, as it were. If you do not know about the prison show, well, it's a very unique and endearing radio program. There's really not anything like it in the country or in the world. It's a timely kind of documentary that captures the spirit and the heart of KPFT's The Prison Show, which for over 40 years has been a very important lifeline between incarcerated Texans and their families. It's directed by Gabriella Kessler, and it was designed specifically to explore how this local Houston radio station, KPFT, became a powerful space for connection and healing and for advocacy. If you do have the opportunity to go to this particular program, again, you can always find the information about this on the KPFT website. The special guests at this showing are going to be Gabriella Kessler, the director, and David Collingsworth, who is the longtime producer of the Prison Show on KPFT. They'll be there in attendance with all of your post-screening questions. Again, you can always see that on our webpage, kpft.org, or on our Facebook page. We will be posting that information on the Execution Watch Facebook page as well. Well, we do have a couple of more minutes to fill here. I want to thank everyone who has been participating in tonight's show. Jessica, thank you so much. It was fascinating to hear about the work that you all are doing, absolutely. And David, you've kind of added a humanization to some of the things that we just don't really get to hear very much about. The people who are behind the walls, we see the Hollywood version, if you don't mind me saying so, of what is supposed to go on in prison and death row, and it's the warden will never come back through and tell you it's over, or a last-minute reprieve. It's really very interesting. So again, our thanks to David Fleming, of course. Pablo Torre finds out. If you can see that on Meadowlark Media on your favorite website, as the case may be. And thank you so much to Jessica to talk about the national exonerations. Let's just go ahead and close it out today. You have been listening to KPFT 90.1 FM. There are no additional execution dates posted on the Texas Department of Criminal Justice right now, which is really a rarity. But when they do, KPFT Execution Watch will bring it to you live. We welcome your opinions. We appreciate all your comments on social media and beyond. Our information can be found at executionwatch.org. And to learn more about the death penalty and executions, especially here in Texas, go ahead and while you're there, subscribe to our mailing list. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Execution Watch and past shows on YouTube. Our thanks again to the entire Execution Watch crew. I want to thank Linda Snyder and her gang in Huntsville. Thank you for being there in the heat and standing there as witness. We appreciate that. I want to especially thank our video director, Mark Pirtle, our technical director, Otis McClay, engineer, Howard Reynolds, board op at KPFT, Blue Villatoro, production assistant, Mel Peterson, traffic, Arlene Russell, and of course, our main thanks goes out to executive producer Elizabeth Ann Stein, the creator, along with Ray Hill, of Execution Watch. If you're listening live on 90.1 FM, stay tuned for jazz in all its colors with Sinbad. This has been a special edition of Execution Watch. I'm Marlo Blue. Good night.
State of Texas, leave Willie alone. The government killed the most. Got a problem, death row. Ever wonder where money goes? People of Texas, don't you know? Some accused are innocent. Some get good lawyers, most don't. State of Texas, killing machine. Don't you know they're killing people? 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 They're not giving up. One's too many. Will 1,000 be enough? One we're not giving up. One's too many and 1,000. People of Texas, children of God. It's insane. In Jesus' name.